My name is Ethan Cole. I'm 29, and the night my family finally noticed me was the same night I set a folder on my aunt's polished dining table. For years they'd laughed about my little tech hobby, bragged about my cousin's suits and bonuses, while I drove a rust-stained hatchback to work. That night, champagne glasses glittered, forks froze midair, and every smug smile drained when they saw the company name on that folder. The same name Brandon had spent months bragging about. But what they didn't know was whose name sat at the top of it. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family, the kind of betrayal that smiles across the dinner table. Because what happened next will show you how silence can cut deeper than any shout, and how one quiet night turned the entire story of my family upside down. I grew up in a house where silence meant survival. Every Sunday, our family gathered at my Aunt Victoria's place in Winnetka, a neighborhood of manicured lawns and symmetrical smiles. Her house looked like something from a magazine: spotless marble counters, glass chandeliers, and a staircase designed to be seen, not climbed. Back then, I thought it was just how grown-ups lived. It took years to realize every sparkle in that house came from comparison. I was 14 when I first noticed it: the way her tone changed when she spoke to me versus Brandon. That summer, she threw a barbecue that pulled half the neighborhood into her backyard. The air smelled like burnt ribs and fresh-cut grass. I was sweating through my t-shirt, refilling the cooler with sodas, while Brandon strutted around in a brand-new Cubs jersey, flipping burgers like he owned the place. "Isn't he such a natural leader?" Victoria announced, her wine glass raised toward the crowd. Brandon grinned, his teeth bright under the string lights. "Someone's got to keep the operation running," she laughed, high and sharp. Then she turned to me. "Ethan, honey, grab more ice from the garage, would you?" I nodded, pretending not to hear the chuckles. In that moment, I learned that in my family, visibility came with performance. You were either the show or the stagehand. I was always the stagehand. I didn't know it back then, but that tiny humiliation, the ice run, the laughter would echo for years. At 17, I won first place at a regional coding competition. My parents were proud, though they didn't really understand what it meant. My mom baked a pie. My dad took a blurry photo on his old phone. We showed up at Victoria's house that weekend still buzzing. Brandon had just gotten a B+ in calculus, and Victoria greeted him like he'd cured cancer. "He's a genius," she gushed to everyone. "Math is in his blood." When my mom mentioned my competition, Victoria blinked, polite but vacant. "Oh, that's cute," she said. "He's good with computers." Then, smiling sweetly, "Maybe he can fix our Wi-Fi sometime." Everyone laughed. I did too, because that's what you do when you're the joke. But something burned deep in my throat that night, something I couldn't swallow. College was supposed to change that. I got into the University of Illinois on scholarship and decided to major in computer engineering. I thought distance would give me freedom, but you can't outrun people who live in your blood. Every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, it was the same story. Brandon would arrive in designer coats, talking about his internships at top finance firms. He'd brag about connections he didn't have, mentors who didn't exist. Victoria would glow beside him like a PR manager. And me? I'd show up with a laptop bag and quiet dreams. I worked nights, fixing computers for campus housing offices, writing code for small-time clients just to pay rent. One night, during finals week, Brandon FaceTimed me from a bar downtown. The music was so loud I could barely hear him. "Yo, IT boy," he shouted. "Still living off ramen?" I laughed, said, "Yeah," and hung up before he saw the cracked wall behind me. I didn't know it then, but I was already building the foundation that would one day make him choke on his own words. After college, while Brandon bounced between short-lived jobs, I started something with two friends, Maya Patel and Lucas Kim. We called it North Star Labs. Back then, it was just a name scribbled on a sticky note above an old monitor. We rented a 2-room space in the loop leaky pipes, one flickering light, and a coffee pot that sounded like it was dying every morning. But there was fire there. Real fire. We worked 12-hour days, coded until sunrise, ate takeout from the diner downstairs until the waitresses knew our orders by heart. We couldn't afford desks, so we stacked cardboard boxes. When one client bailed on us, we used the deposit to pay internet bills. Every win felt microscopic, but it was ours. Maya was the sole patient, brilliant, ruthless with deadlines. Lucas handled investors and paperwork. I just built, tested, broke, rebuilt. Someday, Lucas said, we'll look back at this dump and laugh. Yeah, I said, if we survive it. That first winter, the radiator in our office exploded during a snowstorm. We spent the night wrapped in coats, coating beside a space heater that smelled like burning dust. At 3 a.m., Maya handed me a cold slice of pizza and said, you know, this'll make a great documentary someday. I smiled. If we don't die first. We didn't die. We grew. The first Thanksgiving after our company turned a profit, I went home. I was tired but proud. I'd finally bought a used hatchback gray. Dented. Reliable. It wasn't much, but it was mine. When I pulled into my aunt's driveway, Brandon's new Mercedes was already there, gleaming like a trophy. He leaned against it, sunglasses on despite the cloudy sky. Ethan, he called. Still rocking the economy line, huh? Still gets me where I need to go, I said. Respect, he said, grinning. Not everyone can be allergic to success. At dinner, Victoria bragged about Brandon's promotion at a firm downtown. She couldn't remember the company's name. Didn't matter. Everyone nodded, impressed. When the conversation drifted to me, she smiled politely. And how's your little tech thing going? It's doing fine, I said. Good, good, she replied, already turning to refill Brandon's glass. I wanted to tell her about our first major contract, our expanding client list, our growing team, but I didn't. I chewed my turkey, swallowed my pride, and stared at the reflection of chandelier light in my water glass. It looked like a tiny galaxy, spinning in silence. I didn't know it then, but silence would become my greatest weapon. That winter, I started keeping records. Notes, screenshots, folders proof of everything. Maybe it was paranoia, maybe habit, but I'd learned that people twist stories and paper doesn't lie. Every invoice, every signed deal, every version history, I kept them all. Not for revenge, just insurance. By the time I turned 28, North Star Labs wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. We had a dozen employees, real clients, even a small office renovation that made us look legitimate. Investors started calling us, promising, but I stayed quiet. No fancy car, no announcements at family dinners. Because deep down, I knew the second I started shining, Victoria would find a way to dim it. Then came the call that changed everything. It was late October, right before Thanksgiving. Jenna Morales, our HR lead, called me into her office. She looked uneasy, holding a printed resume. Ethan, she said, this one might interest you. I took the paper. The name hit like a cold slap. Brandon Hale. Under experience, he'd listed vague job titles. Financial consultant. Strategic advisor. No specifics, no dates. In the cover letter, he wrote, I'm inspired by North Star's mission and culture of innovation. I stared at the name, then at Jenna. Run it through standard screening, I said. No special treatment. You got it, she replied. 2 days later, the system flagged him as rejected, insufficient experience. And just like that, years of buried tension began to stir again. I didn't tell anyone. Not Maya, not Lucas, not my parents. But that weekend, I drove to Winnetka for Thanksgiving. The same house, the same shine, the same laughs that always came with hidden blades. I told myself I could handle it, that I'd smile through the jokes like always. But I had no idea that the next few months would turn those polite smiles into daggers, and that my quiet little folder would one day become the loudest thing in the room. Thanksgiving that year felt like walking into a stage play I'd already memorized. The smell of buttered rolls, the fake warmth in every "so good to see you," the chandelier reflecting off polished wine glasses like a spotlight. Only this time, I knew my lines and I wasn't planning to say them. Brandon arrived 10 minutes late, as always. Enough to make sure everyone noticed his entrance. He tossed his car keys on the counter like it was a trophy. Sorry, traffic, he said. That Mercedes practically drives itself. Victoria swooned. It's a statement piece. You know, some people work their whole lives and never afford that kind of comfort. She looked right at me when she said it. I smiled and kept carving the turkey. Dinner began like a highlight reel of every other year. Brandon bragged about corporate deals he never closed, name-dropped clients no one could verify. Victoria peppered the conversation with reminders of his ambition, his drive. And whenever someone tried to mention anyone else, she'd pivot back to him. When my mom said softly, "Ethan's company just opened a second office," Victoria barely paused between bites. "Oh, that's nice," she said. "Startups can be fun before the real world kicks in." The table chuckled. That was the thing about her laughter. It was never funny, just contagious enough to make everyone join in. I caught my dad's eyes across the table. His look said what words never did. "Let it go." I nodded. And I did. Outwardly. But under the table, my hand was tight around my phone, and on that phone was a screenshot of the application Brandon had sent to my company. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But a quiet kind of calculation started forming in my chest. A week later, Jenna called again. "Ethan," she said carefully, "there's something you need to see." She turned her monitor toward me. It was an email sent to our HR inbox from an anonymous account. The subject line read, "Concerns about internal favoritism at North Star Labs." Inside, the message claimed that an executive at North Star was pushing for the hiring of an unqualified relative. The wording was formal, the grammar off like someone trying too hard to sound professional. But what stood out was the timing. 2:14 a.m. Central Time. And the device signature. Jenna scrolled. "See that code at the bottom? It matches a MacBook we've seen before, someone who used our careers site 3 weeks ago." She paused. "It's the same model, same OS version, same time zone as your cousin's application." I stared at the screen. "You're saying?" "I'm saying it came from somewhere close to him, maybe even his house." For a second, all I could do was laugh. A short, dry sound. "He didn't even get past screening," I said. "I know," she replied. "But someone wanted it to look like you helped him. We'll document it and move on." Quietly. I nodded, but inside, something cracked open. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was strategy. A few days later, the phone rang again. "Ethan," Victoria's voice, all honey and command. I was hoping we could chat about Brandon's situation. I leaned back in my chair. "What situation?" She laughed lightly. "Oh, you know, the little application thing. He mentioned he reached out to your company. I just wanted to make sure his resume got into the right hands." "It did," I said. "Oh, good. Then you'll make sure it's seen properly?" "We treat all applicants equally," I said. Her tone sharpened. "Families have standards, Ethan. We look out for each other. I'm sure your boss would understand that." I smiled even though she couldn't see it. My boss would agree, equal standards for everyone. Silence stretched. Then she exhaled, tight and clipped. "Fine. I'll just remind him myself when we meet at Christmas." And she hung up. Christmas came faster than I expected. Snow blanketed the driveway. The Hale house glowed with gold lights, every corner dripping with garland and excess. Brandon was mid-story when I walked in. So yeah, I might have an interview lined up with the CEO himself. Big deal. "Oh," Victoria clapped. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Then, noticing me, "Ethan, dear, maybe you two will be co-workers soon. Isn't that exciting?" I smiled faintly. "You're applying to North Star?" Brandon grinned. "Already in talks. With HR?" He hesitated, just for a beat. "With management." I said. "Then good luck." The table laughed again, oblivious to the ice under the words. All night, I played along. I helped serve dessert. I asked about vacation plans. I even complimented Brandon's new watch, the one he later admitted was on payment plan. But behind the calm, my pulse stayed steady, because I already knew what was coming next. By mid-January, gossip started spreading through the family group chat. Someone posted, "Proud of Brandon for chasing his dreams in tech." Then another message, "Heard he's helping Ethan's company grow." It was so absurd I almost respected the creativity. A few days later, my mom called. She said, "You're jealous," she whispered. "That you're making things difficult for him at work." "He doesn't work for me, Mom." "I know, honey, but she's saying." "I know what she's saying." I hung up and went for a drive. The streets were slick with salt, the city cold and sharp. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt focused. At the office the next morning, Jenna met me by the elevator. "Update," she said. "We confirmed that emails source same IP range as your aunt's address." "It's pretty obvious." I exhaled slowly. "Document it. Don't respond." Are you sure? She asked. You could pursue it formally. Not yet, I said. I want to see how far they'll go. A week later, Aunt Carol accidentally did me a favor. She forwarded a photo to the entire extended family chat, a snapshot of Victoria's desk. On it sat a draft email, open on her laptop. Internal misconduct at North Star Labs concerned relatives' perspective. The subject line alone was enough. She deleted it seconds later, but screens move faster than guilt. Half the cousins had already seen it. When my mom called that night, her voice shook. She's denying it. Of course, she is. What are you going to do? I looked at the folder on my desk, the one with every piece of proof printed and organized. I'm going to stop waiting, I said. That was the moment everything shifted. For years, I'd swallowed the humiliation, the jokes, the way they said little tech thing like it was a hobby instead of a company that paid 15 salaries. For years, I'd smiled through their false praise, their comparisons, their casual cruelty. But now, I had something they didn't. Truth. Tangible. Documented. Unshakable truth. And I was done letting them rewrite me. I didn't know it then, but the next dinner, the one that was supposed to celebrate Brandon's big break, would be the night everything flipped. The night my silence stopped protecting them. By February, the family dynamic had started to shift not in words, but in temperature. Texts that used to be filled with cheerful emojis now came half-heartedly. Invitations turned from, "We'd love to see you," to, "If you're free." They could sense something was changing, but no one wanted to say it out loud. At the same time, the company merger with Helix Point was taking off. My calendar was full investor calls, late-night strategy sessions, legal reviews. On paper, I was thriving. But at home, I could feel a different kind of war brewing. It started small. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in months texted me out of nowhere. "Hey man, Aunt V's been saying you're under investigation, or something? That true?" I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the screen. I typed, "No, that's false," then deleted it. Instead, I sent, "Don't believe everything you hear." Because that's how Victoria worked. She didn't attack directly. She planted seeds, then waited for the whispers to do the gardening. The next blow came quietly, through my mom. "She's been calling around," Mom said, "telling people you've changed, that you're arrogant now." I laughed bitterly. "Because I stopped being quiet?" She said, "Success got to your head." "Success?" I said. "She still calls it a little startup." Mom sighed. "Ethan, she's scared. You're disrupting her picture of things." Maybe that was true. For years, Victoria had controlled the family's image. Who was the pride? Who was the shame? Who got the credit? And now that her golden boy's shine was fading, she needed a villain. At work, I buried myself in structure. Spreadsheets, deadlines, contracts, things that followed logic, unlike family gossip. But the walls between those two worlds started thinning. Jenna stopped by my office one morning. "You've got a problem," she said, handing me her phone. There was a LinkedIn post, not from anyone inside North Star, but from a fake account using our company's logo. The post hinted at internal corruption and executives favoring relatives. The writing style was painfully familiar. "Can you trace it?" I asked. "Already did," Jenna said. "Same IP block as the anonymous email." "Same house?" She nodded. I leaned back, fingers steepled. "So now they've taken it public." She hesitated. "What do you want to do?" "Nothing. Not yet. Because revenge isn't about reaction. It's about timing." Meanwhile, Brandon was slipping. The firm he worked for downsized, and suddenly his social media updates went from "new client win" to "taking time to reflect and plan my next move." Translation: unemployed. But instead of owning it, he doubled down. He started bragging in the group chat about transitioning into tech leadership, dropping vague hints about a major startup opportunity. I didn't call him out. I just watched the performance unfold. Each message was like a test, and I wanted to see how far he'd take it. By March, things escalated. I got a call from my father, a rare thing in itself. "Ethan," he said quietly, "your aunt came by." I stopped typing. "What for?" "She asked me to lend Brandon some money. Said it was temporary." I laughed, short and sharp. "Did you?" "No," Dad said. "I told her we don't finance arrogance." There was a pause, then his voice softened. "But she didn't take it well. She said you've forgotten where you come from." That one hit deeper than I expected. Forgotten where I came from. The irony of it almost made me choke. I was the one who still drove the same car, who still visited my parents every Sunday, who still refused to flaunt money. But in their story, humility was rewritten as shame. Then came the dinner invite mid-January sequel, this time for Easter family bonding. Victoria's message was perfectly rehearsed. We'd love to celebrate together. Brandon has exciting news. Exciting news. That phrase stayed in my inbox like a dare. I knew what was coming. Another illusion. Another round of lies served with champagne. And this time, I wasn't planning to play audience. At the office, Lucas and Maya noticed my distraction. "You're somewhere else," Maya said, setting a coffee on my desk. "Family stuff," I admitted. Lucas chuckled. "Ah, the original startup, dysfunctional and overfunded with ego." I smirked. "You have no idea." Maya leaned forward. "Just be careful, Ethan. Whatever you do, don't drag the company into it. You know Victoria would love to twist that." "I won't," I said. But in truth, I was already drafting something in my head, not a statement, not an outburst, but an ending. Because the next dinner wouldn't be about defending myself. It would be about exposure measured, controlled, undeniable. The week before Easter, Chicago thawed. Snow melted into gray puddles, and the air smelled faintly of gasoline and wet pavement. Every year, that change used to make me feel hopeful, a reset. This time, it felt like a countdown. My mother called 2 days before the dinner. "Ethan, promise me you'll be civil." I smiled into the receiver. "When have I ever not been?" She hesitated. "Your aunt said Brandon might have something important to announce. Maybe it's a new job. Or maybe it's another story." I said quietly. "Either way, I'll be there." Easter Sunday. The Hale house looked like a showroom. White tulips, gold-rimmed plates, even color-coded napkins. Victoria stood at the entrance like the director of her own play. "Ethan," she exclaimed. "So glad you made it. Don't forget to remove your shoes. Imported oak floors." I nodded. Wouldn't want to offend the wood. She blinked, smile twitching, then turned to greet someone else. Inside, the conversation flowed easily, all surface, no depth. Brandon was already holding court near the fireplace, his blazer crisp, his voice confident. When he saw me, that familiar smirk returned. "Look who finally decided to show," he said. "Wouldn't miss the show," I replied. He laughed. "Still working on that app thing, huh? Still pretending to understand what I do, huh?" I said, just as lightly. A few heads turned. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback ready. Dinner began with the usual spectacle: toasts, laughter, thinly veiled digs disguised as humor. Victoria made sure to highlight Brandon's upcoming opportunity with a major firm. She looked at me mid-sentence, eyes gleaming. "Maybe you've heard of it, Ethan. A startup in the Loop?" My fork froze halfway to my mouth. The Loop. My territory. "Can't say I have," I said. "There are so many small companies around here." Brandon grinned. "Oh, it's not small. Big operation. Tech focus. Data analytics, I think. Ring any bells?" His arrogance was so precise, so rehearsed. I almost admired it. Almost. After dessert, he cornered me by the window, swirling his wine. "So, any updates on my application?" he asked casually, like we'd been colleagues all along. "Which one?" I said. He blinked. "North Star." I met his eyes. "It was rejected. Weeks ago." He laughed nervously. "Right. Sure. That's what you have to say before interviews." "No," I said, my tone steady. "That's what happens when you're not qualified." The color drained from his face. He looked around quickly, lowering his voice. "You think you're better than me, don't you?" "I don't think about you at all," I said, and I walked away. The next morning, an email hit my inbox from a burner account. "Enjoy your little power trip while it lasts." No name, no signature, but the writing, the punctuation, the spacing was unmistakably Victoria's. She'd gone from whispers to open warfare. That same day, HR forwarded a formal complaint. It accused me of conflict of interest for managing a hiring process involving family. Attached was a note from a concerned relative. I laughed out loud. She'd recycled the exact title from her draft email weeks before. Jenna peeked into my office. "You okay?" "I'm great," I said. "I think it's time." "Time for what?" "Closure." That evening, I drove to my parents' house. Dad was in the garage, fixing an old lawnmower, the air thick with the smell of gasoline and metal. He looked up, wiping his hands. "You look like you're about to do something big." "Maybe." He nodded slowly. "Just remember, son, dignity is a weapon too. Use it right, and you don't have to swing twice." "I know," I said. "That's the plan." The next few days, I gathered everything. The printed resume, the cover letter, the email timestamps. Not to humiliate, to clarify. There's a difference between revenge and revelation. And I wasn't after blood. I was after silence, the kind that comes after truth. Before the dinner, I stopped by the office one last time. Maya caught me near the elevator. "You sure about this?" "Yeah. Don't let them pull you down to their level." I smiled faintly. "I'm not going down. I'm inviting them up to reality." When the invitation came for Victoria's summer celebration dinner, I already knew what it was about. Another performance. Another attempt to paint Brandon as redeemed, reborn, respected. She didn't realize she'd scheduled her own finale. Because that night, for the first time in my life, I wasn't going as the quiet cousin. I was going as the man who built the company her son pretended to work for. And when the curtain rose, I was done whispering. The evening of the summer dinner was painted in gold, that slow, syrupy light Chicago gets before dusk. I parked my hatchback across the street from the Hale Mansion, the same place that had hosted every humiliation I'd swallowed since I was a teenager. Only this time, my hands didn't shake. On the passenger seat lay a folder, matte black, simple, deliberate. Inside were three things: Brandon's resume and cover letter, a screenshot of North Star's leadership page with my name beneath the title Chief Executive Officer, and a printed version of the anonymous email, the one sent from Victoria's own device. I didn't come to destroy them. I came to end their version of me. When I walked through the front door, the noise hit me first. Laughter, glass, the hum of wealth and performance. Victoria swept in like she was greeting a camera crew. "Ethan," she sang, fashionably late as always. "Had to make sure the oak floors were ready for me," I said. Her smile faltered for half a beat. "Of course." Brandon appeared behind her, tan and polished in a navy suit that looked more expensive than his job history. "Look who finally showed," he said. "Hope you're ready to toast to some real success tonight." I smiled. "Can't wait." The dinner table gleamed like a stage. Candles reflected in crystal, every seat filled with relatives, cousins, uncles, the same faces that had nodded through years of backhanded compliments. Victoria sat at the head, Brandon to her right. Me 2 seats down, where the quiet ones always Saturday. As plates clinked and wine poured, Victoria rose with her glass. "I'd like to make a toast," she said, beaming. "To my son, Brandon, soon to be part of a leading tech firm in the city." Polite applause followed. Someone murmured, "So proud of you." Someone else said, "Which company?" Victoria smiled mysteriously. "A little firm in the Loop. Very selective. They reached out personally." Brandon chuckled, basking in it. "Yeah, it's a big deal. CEOs personally reviewing candidates. You'll probably read about it soon." He looked right at me when he said it. I set down my glass. "That so?" I said. He grinned. "Yeah. Heard you know the scene pretty well." "Better than most," I said. "Which firm did you say it was again?" He leaned back. "You'll find out soon enough. Don't want to jinx it." I nodded. "Of course." The table shifted, people sensing the tension under the small talk. Even the chandelier light seemed to sharpen. "Anyway," Victoria said, laughing too loudly, "we're just thrilled he's being recognized by the right people." "The right people," I repeated quietly. Always an interesting phrase. "Success attracts success," she said smoothly. "It's all about knowing the right circles." I met her gaze and smiled. "You're absolutely right." Then I reached for my folder. The sound of paper on glass was louder than I expected. Conversation stopped. Brandon froze mid-laugh. I slid the folder across the table toward him. "Thought you might want this back," I said. He frowned, confused. "What is—" His words died when he saw his own name printed at the top of the resume. Victoria's voice tightened. "Ethan, what is this supposed to be?" "Your son's application," I said evenly. "The one he sent to North Star Labs. My company." Silence hit like a gust of wind. "I'm sorry?" Victoria blinked. "Your company?" I nodded once. "Yes. North Star Labs, CEO, since its founding. A few forks clattered onto plates. Someone whispered, "Wait, what?" Brandon stammered. You're saying, "I'm saying," I said calmly, "that the position you applied for doesn't exist anymore, and that the email accusing me of nepotism came from this address." I tapped the printed header. "Your house Wi-Fi, actually." Color drained from Victoria's face. "That's absurd," she snapped. "You can't just accuse us." "I'm not accusing," I interrupted quietly. "I'm clarifying." Brandon's voice cracked. "You set me up." I turned to him. "You applied. You lied. You bragged." I just showed the truth. The room was silent except for the faint tick of the grandfather clock. No one moved. Even the air felt heavy, dense with everything unsaid over the years. Victoria's voice broke the stillness. "You came here just to humiliate us?" I shook my head. "No, I came to stop pretending." She slammed her napkin down. "You think this makes you better than us?" "I don't need to be better," I said. "Just honest." Brandon stood abruptly, face red. "You're pathetic. You've always been jealous." I met his eyes. Maybe I was once, but not anymore. He clenched his fists, trembling, then sat back down, chest heaving. No one dared speak. The weight of their silence was louder than any apology. I reached for my jacket, buttoned it slowly. Then I looked around the table, at every face that had laughed at me, dismissed me, pitied me. "I'm not here to embarrass anyone," I said. "I just thought it was time the truth had a seat at this table." And with that, I turned toward the door. Behind me, I heard whispers ripple through the room. Confusion, shock, disbelief. Victoria's voice cracked, trying to salvage control. "He forged it. He's lying." But no one looked at her. Even my father's voice, calm and steady, finally cut through. "Victoria," he said. "Enough." Outside, the night was cool, quiet. Crickets sang from the lawn, and the glow of the Hale mansion flickered through the trees like an old movie reel. I exhaled, long and steady. No anger, no triumph, just release. Because revenge doesn't always come with shouting or tears. Sometimes it's the sound of a chair scraping back, a door closing softly, and the truth left behind to echo in the silence. I walked to my car, opened the door, and glanced once more at the house that had defined so much of my pain. It looked smaller now, or maybe I'd finally outgrown it. The fallout came faster than I expected. By Monday morning, my phone was buzzing non-stop texts from cousins. Missed calls from relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years. Everyone wanted to check in, but what they really wanted was gossip. Victoria, predictably, went into damage control mode. She called my mother 3 times in one day, insisting I had ambushed them, that I'd fabricated documents. But the problem was, too many people had seen. They'd seen Brandon's resume, the North Star logo, my name sitting neatly under CEO. You can't unsee the truth once it's laid bare in good lighting. Still, I didn't respond. I didn't post online. I didn't defend myself. I didn't need to, because silence was already doing the job better than I ever could. 3 nights later, I got a text from an unknown number. I shouldn't have lied. It was Brandon. Then another. I was desperate. Mom kept pushing. I just wanted her to stop comparing us. I stared at the screen for a long time. For years, I'd imagined what I'd say if he ever apologized. I thought I'd feel vindicated, maybe satisfied. But instead, all I felt was tired. I typed, "You didn't need to lie to beat me. You just needed to grow up." Then I deleted it. Instead, I wrote, "Take care of yourself," and hit send. A week later, Jenna came into my office holding a folder. "Hey," she said, "you'll want to see this." Inside was a forwarded message from a hiring manager at another firm. Brandon had apparently used a fake reference letter signed with my name. "He's still trying?" Jenna asked. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, some lessons take longer." I didn't call him out. I simply sent the forged letter to their HR team through the official channel, attached with a short note. "For your records. No drama. No noise. Just quiet accountability." That night, I went home, poured a glass of whiskey, and sat by the window overlooking the city. Below, headlights shimmered across the river, each one moving forward, steady, silent, unstoppable. I realized that was all I ever wanted. Not revenge, not even recognition. Just motion, freedom, peace. They'd taken years to notice me. But from now on, I didn't need them to. Because the truth, like time, doesn't chase anyone. It simply waits for everyone else to catch up.